In the first 8 episodes of this series, we followed the historic Carpentersville to Yorkville trolley system, traveling by bicycle, automobile, and foot from Carpentersville in North Kane County through West Dundee, exploring Elgin, then South Elgin and the Fox River Trolley Museum, sailing across St. Charles, jockeying through Geneva, booking through Batavia, meandering through Mooseheart and North Aurora, and ambling through the streetcar system of Aurora. In Part 9 of this Fox River Trolley series, we will continue our journey south, traveling into the unassuming village of Montgomery, which once hosted one of the most beloved amusement parks in the Fox River Valley, that being Riverview Park, later Fox River Park.
In addition to the sources cited in our previous videos, the principal source for this video includes the Digital Research Library of Illinois History Journal, curated by Dr. Neil Gale. The book, The History of Montgomery, Illinois, in Words and Pictures, authored by the Montgomery Historical Committee and published in 1990.
In our previous video of this series, we completed our journey to the south extent of Aurora, merging onto Main Street from Sard Avenue. As we enter Montgomery, as with most communities along the electric trolley system, the Fox River Interurban would have stopped at virtually every intersection. The Interurban line was double-tracked along Main Street until 1922, when the northbound track was removed. Just a half-mile from Sard Avenue, we come to Mill Street, the primary stop for Montgomery. Continuing south along Main Street, we quickly find the way blocked at K Street, where a light industrial building now stands. This was originally the south extent of Montgomery Village, but the trolley right-of-way continued along this path for several hundred feet, today south of Highway 30, where stood the Riverview Park station.
One of the last segments of the Elgin, Aurora, and Southern Traction Railroad to have been built was that between Aurora and Yorkville. Although the line had long been conceived of by both the Elgin and Aurora streetcar companies as a section of an electric interurban railroad from Carpentersville to Yorkville, neither company acted on it while they were engaged in creating the links between Carpentersville and Aurora. Then in April of 1897, a syndicate consisting of Vine A. Watkins, Upshaw P. Horde, and Fayette D. Winslow incorporated the Aurora, Yorkville, and Morris Railway with an initial capital stock of $10,000, or about $350,000 today.
Early on, much of their attention seemed to be focused on the southern terminus, Morris, which strongly desired an electric railway, and which would have provided a trolley link with the Illinois and Michigan Canal. Although confident in quickly securing a route and building the railroad, months passed with no progress on construction. Then in 1898, talk began of bringing in Eastern investors, which suggests that Watkins, who seems to have been bankrolling the enterprise, was backing away from the endeavor. The town of Morris, meanwhile, was growing tired of waiting.
A turnabout occurred, however, in August of 1899, when the enterprise was reorganized, led by 63-year-old Illinois State Senator Henry H. Evans. Evans was a consummate businessman who was not afraid to mix his political responsibilities with his business interests. As we previously described, Evans headed a syndicate that first originated the Aurora Street Railway System in 1882 as a horse-drawn affair, then oversaw its successful conversion to electricity in 1890. Evans, who had many businesses, including hotels, saw railroads as a means of steering and transporting patrons to his commercial properties.
Evans quickly turned the attention of the railway back to Aurora, where he intended to link it up with another new business enterprise, a major new amusement venue south of Aurora, near Montgomery. The needs of Morris would be taken care of only after the railway was built to Oswego and Yorkville.
Almost immediately, the Aurora, Yorkville, and Morris began building south from River Street and Downer Place in Aurora, with 200 laborers digging into streets, laying ties and tracks, and wiring poles. Simultaneously, they contracted several buildings to be built within the new amusement venue, to be named Riverview, just south of Montgomery. By early November, they had streetcars running from Aurora to the north end of Montgomery, and by November 7th, they had train cars running all the way to the new park. More than 500 people attended the dedication of Riverview Park in South Montgomery, almost double the population of the small town. For the remainder of the winter season, the Aurora, Yorkville, and Morris contracted the use of Aurora streetcars to run on their new road, with intentions to purchase new cars in the following spring.
Meanwhile, construction of the electric road continued south. In April of 1900, they were granted a franchise through the town of Oswego and completed the line there by late June. Within 6 months, they had constructed the electric road all the way to Yorkville and were running trains by the end of that year, having put in operation more than 11 miles of trackage to the south from Aurora. To the north, the final segment of the Aurora and Geneva was being put into place during the first few months of 1901, thereby completing the long-held dream of a Fox Valley interurban, extending from Carpentersville to Yorkville. As this dream came to fruition, all of the Fox Valley segments, including the Aurora, Yorkville, and Morris, were sold to the Cleveland Syndicate, led by Mandelbaum and Pomeroy. The newly coined AY&M's selling price was $225,000, about $7 million in today's money, and Senator Evans was believed to have made $50,000 from the sale, about $1.5 million today. The entire Fox Valley Trolley system, of course, was folded into the Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Electric Railroad in the subsequent few years.
The AE&C's extensive electric railroad to the north, south, and east also meant that residents all along the Fox River Valley, as well as Chicago and its western suburbs, could easily access the newly constructed Riverview Park, as the trolley system delivered patrons directly to its front entrance. The park had a grand reopening on Sunday, April 29, 1900, with several new buildings and features constructed for the occasion, including a 3-arch formal entrance, a new train station building, a dance hall, a refreshment hall, a bandstand, a shoot-the-chute ride into the Fox River, a merry-go-round, a playground for children, and a baseball diamond.
The park stood to the east of the new train station, which was a raised wooden platform, over 100 feet long, much of it covered by a canopy. Passing through the front gates, the major buildings and attractions were arranged in a large semicircle, roughly 300 feet in radius, with the entrance at the center. The dance hall stood to the right and was a commodious open structure, 62 feet by 114 feet in dimension, lit by electric lights during the evening. The dining hall or restaurant stood between the dance hall and river and was also open, more than 50 feet wide and 110 feet long. An octagonal bandstand provided an elevated platform from which a small band or orchestra would stream music to the patrons on warm Sunday afternoons. A favorite of children, the carousel stood leftmost from the entrance.
As time passed, the park evolved, adding to and improving attractions. In 1903, the original carousel was replaced with the Flying Dutchman merry-go-round, one of the largest and finest of such amusements in the country. In 1907, Riverview adopted a unifying theme to its overall design and architecture, using a stucco finish on most buildings in a mission-style design. The front entrance pillars were also stuccoed, with elaborate clusters of frost spheres added for lighting. A large auditorium was built about this time too, between the dance hall and merry-go-round. It was the most substantial structure on the property, a round building 130 feet in diameter with steel truss construction and with a seating capacity of 3,500. A few years later, by 1910, a sizable figure-8 roller coaster was added, which careened patrons high over the Fox River, while picnic grounds, canoe, and paddle boat rentals enticed patrons to more serene activities along the riverside.
The park was the site of many chautauquas in the early 1900s. These events were large tent gatherings featuring lectures, concerts, and plays, a venue for popular education, self-improvement, and intellectual entertainment. The park built a wooden theater, and later the auditorium, specifically to accommodate these conventions.
Not surprisingly, the fairground was a very popular destination throughout the early 1900s and into the mid-1910s. Open summer electric train cars arrived at the Riverview station every 10 minutes throughout the summer months, often packed with patrons. The fare to the park from Aurora was 5 cents, about $1.50 today. Entrance to the park was free, although most rides and amusements cost patrons 5 or 10 cents apiece. However, many families came to simply enjoy the open air, the bucolic scenery, to listen to band music filtering from a distance through the cool shade of mature trees, or to soak in the serene sights along the Fox River. In May of 1910, the park changed its name from Riverview to the Fox River Park, as an amusement park with the same name on the northwest side of Chicago, along the North Branch of the Chicago River, was becoming very popular in its own right, and which led to confusion in marketing.
A baseball diamond with a grandstand stood a few hundred feet further down the line, to the south of the park sidings. It was used by semi-professional baseball teams, primarily the Wisconsin-Illinois League, with the Aurora team, then known as the Aurora Blues, using it as their home field, financed by the railroad. The legendary Casey Stengel got his start here in 1911.
Following World War I, the Fox River Park, as well as other destination parks on the AE and C line, went into serious decline. The United States fell into a recession subsequent to the war, and the rise of automobiles gave families more choices as to where to spend their entertainment dollar. The opening of the Central States Fair and Exposition Park in North Aurora in 1922, just 6 miles to the north, was direct competition to Fox River Park, and it was bigger and featured grander amusements, such as horse racing, automobile racing, air shows, and an enormous swimming pool. The quaint, bucolic turn-of-the-century amusements of Fox River Park were no match for the increasingly sensational diversions of next-generation fairgrounds.
In 1924, the AE and FRE formally requested the Illinois Commerce Commission to shut down their line from Fox River Park to Yorkville, resulting in that portion of the line being abandoned by the 1st of February 1925. By the late 1920s, the park was still being used, but only for chicken fries and family picnics. The buildings that once hosted hundreds of thousands of patrons every summer became the haunt of hobos and fell into disrepair, and were taken down one after another in the late 1920s. In June of 1934, the AE and FRE filed a petition with the ICC to abandon their interurban line between Aurora and Montgomery, from First Street in Aurora to Cass Street in Montgomery, with abandonment becoming reality by the last few months of that year.
Since that time, the property once known as Riverview Park has exchanged hands multiple times, becoming a site for a wallpaper factory and then an ordnance factory in the 1940s, and then a massive telecom equipment plant from the 1950s to the 1990s. It is now owned by the Fox Metro Water Reclamation District. It fills more than 40 acres just south of Highway 30, between the Fox River and the former CB&Q railroad line. Where once stood dance halls, auditoriums, bandstands, carousels, and a baseball field, filled with music, laughter, and banter, now stands a large solar panel power plant, quietly generating power for the good residents of Montgomery. The former trolley passed beneath the CB&Q line as it bent towards the Fox River, then made a turn southwest, traveling up the riverbank for 1,500 feet before rejoining the county highway, Route 31.
Montgomery is yet another Fox River community that can trace its origins to within 1 or 2 years of the Black Hawk War in northern Illinois, when Chief Black Hawk rallied his people to cross over the Mississippi from Iowa into Illinois to retake their former homeland in the Rock River Valley. Within a year of Black Hawk's defeat in the summer of 1833, Jacob Carpenter moved with his wife, Nancy Pierce Carpenter, to Napier Settlement, having originated from Logan County, Ohio. By December of that year, the Carpenters moved to the east side of the Fox River, about where Montgomery stands today. Nancy's father, Elijah Pierce, soon joined them and opened a one-room inn for travelers, which came to serve as a stagecoach stop, the one that the McCartys of Aurora were to ultimately usurp a few years later.
The Gray family soon followed, Daniel Samuel Gray and his brother Nicholas arriving from Montgomery County, New York. Daniel and his wife, Margaret Shaver, setting up a home on the west bank of the Fox, with Nicholas already living on a farm to the south. Daniel S. Gray was to acquire an enormous amount of land in both Kane County and Kendall County over the next few years, via public land sales, purchasing 1,200 acres in Kane County and an additional 1,800 acres in Kendall County, not to mention acreage purchased with partners. And it was Daniel Gray to whom much of the credit for founding the Fox River settlement was given. Indeed, the village was called Gray's or Graystown for the first several years of existence.
Gray quickly set about building bridges, taverns, stores, factories, and mills on his newly acquired land, the small town arising on the west bank of the Fox River. A U.S. post office was established at the place in 1848, called Montgomery, named after the county in New York whence the Gray family originated. Gray platted the town in 1853, but died just a few years thereafter, in October 1855. The small settlement voted to incorporate in February of 1858, with Ralph Gray, son of Daniel Gray, as the first village president. But the village was not recognized by the Illinois General Assembly until February of 1859.
By this time, the village population had grown to a few hundred, with a dry goods store, a mower factory, a sash and door factory, a flour mill, and several residences. As the Aurora branch of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy passed through the town, a passenger depot had been established just north of Webster Street on the east side of the tracks. The town's factories were constructed along a mill race parallel with the west bank of the river, with a dam built just south of Taylor Street.
During the early years of the U.S. Civil War, the Illinois Fox River Regiment set up their drilling and training grounds at Camp Hammond, on the west bank of the Fox River, a half-mile north of Montgomery, in what was described as a beautiful meadow, large enough to accommodate 1,200 men in battalion drills. Shortly after the war in 1868, when the city of Aurora upstream installed new steel bridges, one of Aurora's wooden-covered bridges was floated downriver to Montgomery, which installed the certified pre-owned model at Mill Street as an upgrade to theirs.
The village grew, but very slowly in the following decades, barely surpassing a few hundred residents, as the community saw small factories open and close, while its sibling Aurora grew remarkably to the north. The next major shift in the topology of the town was in the early 1890s, when the CB&Q built massive sheep pens along its right-of-way to the northwest of the village. By 1900, the pens grew to accommodate up to 90,000 head of sheep, outnumbering the 350 residents by more than 250 to 1.
The sheep that were brought into Montgomery in the late summer by train cars came from the western range country in Illinois and surrounding states. They were fed grain and hay for several weeks, fattening them for market, at which point they were fleeced and then sent to the abattoir, again via train cars. The manure generated by the vast pens was also put to good use, as manure factories were set up to process the material for sale to farmers and industry. Not surprisingly, Montgomery voted to legally permit the sale of alcohol at this same time.
The coming of the Fox River interurban in 1899 was a boon for the small rural community, providing a means of transportation up and down the Fox River Valley and thence into Chicago. And the arrival of Riverview Park in 1900 would have brought excitement and buzzing crowds of people, as well as hundreds of summer jobs to the village.
The Lion Metal Products Company moved from Chicago to Montgomery in the few years prior to 1910, where they headquartered for the next several decades, while providing work for many residents. Now with a population tipping at 400 and the local economy on the uptick, Montgomery finally replaced its covered wood bridge at Mill Street, only 20 feet wide and in significant disrepair, with a more modern concrete bridge in 1915. Through the First World War, the loss of the Fox River Park, the Great Depression, and World War II, the small community saw only very modest growth, and by 1950, tallied a population just north of 700 residents.
Then, in the mid-1950s, a new employer came to town. In 1955, the Western Electric Corporation, a manufacturing subsidiary of the massive American Telephone and Telegraph Company, set up their Montgomery Works on the former grounds of the Fox River Park. This was part of AT&T's broader mid-century movement of factories and R&D centers away from the more expensive centers on the East Coast, towards the U.S. Midwest, where land and labor were relatively cheap, a business model which has carried forward to the present day, as those Midwest centers have long since been supplanted by cheaper labor and land overseas. The Montgomery Works' 465,000 square foot plant gave employment to more than 1,500 people in the area for decades. And this plant, along with the newly built Aurora Caterpillar manufacturing factory on the south end of town, gave sudden rise to Montgomery's population and economy, which boasted nearly 3,300 residents by 1970.
In 1984, the Mill Street Bridge, now growing long in the tooth, was replaced with a wider and stronger concrete bridge by the Illinois Department of Transportation. A decade later, in 1995, AT&T and Western Electric, beset with financial difficulty after divestiture of the Bell system, made the decision to shut down the Montgomery Works after 40 years of operation. The substantial plant was then torn down within a few years' time, although the environmental impact of the plant has never been fully resolved.
Nonetheless, Montgomery's economy had grown resilient enough to sustain the blow, and has since seen its population grow to more than 20,000 residents, largely driven by the expanding population boom in the Chicago region's western suburbs and the Fox River's scenic and desirable location. Today, Gray's Mill, at the southeast corner of Mill Street and River Street, built in the 1850s, and now a restaurant, is an iconic landmark and reminder of Daniel Gray's legacy. Montgomery's primary industry and employers includes Caterpillar, Carl Budding and Company, and Tangent Technologies. Long living in Aurora's shadow to the north, Montgomery has been quietly emerging as a community with a small-town charm and big city access.
With the construction of Highway 30 over the Fox River in the early 1960s, the former passage of the Fox River interurban line was closed up, and a light industrial building was built in its way. To follow its path, we back up and head to South Lake Street, Illinois Route 31, at Watkins Street. Here we turn left, then passing under Highway 30, heading south along Illinois Route 31. About where the trolley line rejoined the highway, where the road bends to the south, is where Binder's Stop was located. This name may have been referring to a Binder family farm stand. And it is here that we'll end this segment of our journey, where the Fox River interurban departed Montgomery. In our next episode, we will continue south into Kendall County and Oswego, and then onwards to Yorkville.
As always, many thanks to our Be Historic channel community, our subscribers, our Super Thanks contributors, our generous Patreon supporters, and other benefactors. Also, a big shout out to the good folks at the Montgomery Village Hall. If you're enjoying these videos, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, hype, and share. And if you're so inclined, consider supporting our channel via Patreon. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you, in a manner of speaking, in our next video adventure.